Okay, good evening, everyone. How are you doing today? Good evening, online. Good evening. Okay, so hope everyone are doing good. What did we discuss in our last class? Kubernetes, right? So have you gone through those paints? You're all up to date with all the stuff? Hmm? Hi. Nice. So can we say Kubernetes is orchestration tool? And Kubernetes, whenever you create anything in Kubernetes, it's all about creating the cluster. So what is cluster? Group of nodes. Group of what? Nodes. And then what we have master node and then worker node. You can have one master node and then multiple worker nodes, or also you can have multiple master nodes also, multiple worker nodes also. Let's take an example of one master and multiple worker nodes. And we have seen the differences between Docker Swarm and then Kubernetes. So in Docker Swarm is also a So in Docker Swarm, you have load balancing. Yes or no? In Docker Swarm, we have what? Load balancing. So that meaning, if you remember, do you remember the Docker Swarm commands? So what do we create in Docker Swarm? Service. What do we create? Service. So Docker Swarm service and then hyphen name, service name, replicas. And then if you create a 3 replicas here, because, okay, let's say you create 10 replicas with the image called Jenkins or our internet banking, whichever it is. In one node, you will have multiple containers or not, right? And then if you try to access the node and then port number, so indirectly our Docker Swarm is doing the load balancing. Indirectly, the Docker Swarm is doing what? Load balancing. And also, if you remember, I gave a command to scale Docker service and then service name, and then scale is equal to, or scale service name is equal to 10. If you put it 10, what will happen? It will scale out. And if you reduce the number of the replicas, then it will scale in. Yes, Docker Swarm will scale out, will scale in, but you're doing it manually. You're doing it what? Manually. Is there any automatically scaling? That is why we call it as no auto scaling. What we call no auto scaling. Do we have any auto scaling in Docker Swarm? Scaling is there. Scale out scaling is happening, but that is manually. Automatically scaling is not happening. That's why we call it as no auto scaling. So we have load balancer, but there is no auto scaling. So Docker Swarm also doing so to get those things resolved. We have what here? Kubernetes. What we have here? Kubernetes. And then we have seen the origin of the Kubernetes, who invented, when, what, and all. What is the reason behind it? What's the problems with Docker Swarm? And then what's the advantage of Kubernetes? What are the features of Kubernetes? What is Kubernetes? What does it contain? What are the components it contains? Everything we have seen. So quickly, in master node, what are the components that you have? API, Kube API server, Kube scheduler, etcd, control manager, master server, also called as control plane. What is that? Control plane. And then in worker node, what are the things that we have? Kubelet. Say that, kubelet. So can we say kubelet is an agent or not? Kubelet is an agent which is the one which is communicating with master server. And then kubelet, and then what we have? Kube proxy. What the kube proxy is used for? Assigning the IP address to the containers, that meaning pods. And then inside it, and then container engines are there and pods are there. Inside the pods, what we have? Containers. Inside the containers, what we have? Application. So we create a clusters. Cluster has a nodes, right? And then nodes has what? Pods. And pods has what? Containers. Containers has what? application. This is the hierarchy of the Kubernetes. And also yesterday we have learned about Kubernetes cluster can be self-managed cluster and then cloud-based cluster also. In self-managed cluster, so I gave you few tool names. Can you tell me those tool names? One is Minikube, KubeADM, K8S, right? So in that, which one is not used? Which one we are not using it? KubeADM. So Minikube will go with the single node and KubeADM will go with the multi-node, but that is manually to set up everything. And if you want to automatically set up the cluster, then go for K8S. So today, let's start with the practicals with Minikube. Okay, ready? Yes, good, Dinesh, yes. So we also discuss about key networking concepts, right? Cluster IP, node port, load balancer. And we discuss about volumes, and then we discuss about the services, namespaces, leave me alone concept. Yeah. So cluster IP, when do you use cluster IP? Internal access. So if you want to expose, go with the node port, but node port is with the port number. So if you want to expose to the external access with the load balancer, then go for load balancer. So first will you create service, first will you create cluster IPs, all these things. First you create a service and then we create this networking. Good. So let's go with what first? We need to launch an EC2 instance or not? Okay. So what are the operating system did we cover till now? Operating systems. Red Hat we covered. Amazon Linux we have covered. Ubuntu is less covered. So today I'll be installing Minikube in Ubuntu. Which one? You can install it anywhere, any operating system, any OS is fine. But here we will not be concentrating on operating system much. The only differences between all these operating system is script will be different. So I wrote a script with Ubuntu. I have with the Red Hat also, but only the commands will be differing. So if I now I'll be giving a script here to install Minikube automatically, and those all that script is written in Ubuntu commands like apt. So you need to find out the script. If you want to install in Red Hat or Amazon Linux to corresponding script, you need to find and then install it. But at the moment, we are going with what? Ubuntu. And remember, Kubernetes is little bit stronger, heavier. Your bloody T2 micros will not work from now onwards. So at least you need to go for T2 medium. Which one? Okay. Enough is enough. So let's take some money from your pockets now. But yes, correct, Abhishek. So I was telling something, and yeah, let's go with what is that here today? Let's go with Minikube. So let's go with what? Ubuntu. Yeah, in AWS. Yeah, I told you that till now, how much bill did you got till now? 90 rupees. Huh? I think you should thank me that I managed the entire course with only less than 100 rupees for you. 5,000, right? 5,000 for the other students are getting, not our batch student. Okay, so I was telling you, but if you follow my instructions, definitely will not get any bill. But if you just in case if you forget something, then obviously we'll get the bills. Okay. इतने में डोसा भी नहीं आता. Correct, Vidit. Correct. Yeah, dosa nahi aata, but still you have completed the practicals, right? Good. But from now onwards, please make the money till little bit, because and that too, if you go and complete the practice within 1 hour or 2 hours, you will get less thing also. But when we do the projects like Kubernetes, EKS and all, EKS is little bit expensive. There we'll get, yeah. So we are not old students, so please tell us steps also. For what? Cost optimization. Ranjan, meet me in the morning 10:30 in new batch soon. Yeah. If it takes sandbox for 1 year, will it cover AWS DevOps services also? So you need to find out, Abhishek, there are few services which are free, few are not. Okay, first let me go ahead. Yeah. We are ready to pay bills, sir. Practice is more important for us. Yes, that's why we'll do. Let's go with what? T2 medium. No, T2 small also will work. But sometimes when I was setting up myself for you, guys, before I do, I'll set up everything by myself and come. But not in the morning times, in the night. Nowadays, all nights are, I can see so many stars nowadays. Yeah. But the thing is, when you go for T2 small and all, whenever you're creating pods and then automatically scaling the pods, so you will get some errors. When we check the logs, it clearly shows insufficient memory. For that reason, we'll go with what? T2 medium all the time. So master will go for T2 medium. Worker nodes will go for what? T2 micro is fine. But here, Tausif, I worked on cost optimization, reduce client monthly bill. Oh God, very good, Tausif. Congratulations. And once you get something hike, come and meet me for party. Okay, let's go. So I'm going for what, Nana, here? T2 medium 730. Okay, this. And we'll go for a little bit higher side. I'll go for 20 GB. How much? Kubernetes is little bit heavy. And let's go and launch. So in the GitHub, in our, which one? DevOps scripts, I kept that minikube.sh. Simply what you do, copy, paste it, install it. So just to show you what is doing first, you don't need to worry about this at all because we will not be doing it manually at all. So let's use this script. So it is updating, upgrading, installing some HTTPS, and it is downloading the Docker. And by the way, to set up Minikube and Kubernetes, we need to have Docker also, right? Docker will also be installed automatically. And by the way, I forgot to ask you this question. What is the command that we use to maintain the cluster? kubectl. Which one? kubectl. Okay, so we need to install that. So here we are installing the Docker stuff, and you are installing here what here? Minikube, and then you're moving that Minikube into var local bin, and you're giving the permissions, and Minikube is installed. And then after that, you are downloading which one here? kubectl, and then you're installing the kubectl, and then you are starting the Minikube service. Okay. What is that kind? What is kind you're asking? Let's connect first. Kubernetes in Docker. Ulta, Abhishek. In Docker, we'll use Kubernetes. What's the username for Ubuntu? Ubuntu. What city? Or no, sir. We will use kind also. Yeah, there is a concept called kind. That is that's an object that we use. But why you want now? But we'll use. Okay. In manifest files, we'll use. What was that? 730. Okay. Sudo hyphen. Yes. Okay. Host name ctl set hyphen host name. What is this? Minikube. Sudo hyphen I. I'm into the Minikube. So should we go and install it? So we'll create one small mini.sh. And then what we do here? Copy paste the script. Okay. And then install sh mini.sh. This will take a while. Okay, I already told you one command. What is the command to list the pods? kubectl get pods. We can say pods also. We can say po. You're saying po to me. Pos are. So kubectl get pods. You can say pod also, pods also, po also. Anything is fine. So my reference, my suggestion is let's go for pods. kubectl get pods. And then Kubernetes is all about the cluster, right? In Swarm also, Docker Swarm also, what is the command to list the nodes? Docker Swarm node ls. Here also kubectl get nodes. Say that. kubectl get nodes. So once we install this, but do we have any nodes here? Worker nodes? No, there is only one server. So guys, remember in Kubernetes, what we have, yeah, Docker node ls. Yeah. So in Kubernetes, we have master server and then we have master and then worker nodes, right? We have master and then worker nodes. So I missed that point because I was seeing the chat. Okay, that's fine. Yes, got it. Right. Hold on. Okay, so in master nodes, we have so many components, right? What are the components that we have in the master node? Kube API server, and then Kube scheduler, its etcd, and then control manager. All these things will be there in our master node or not? Okay, that is the cluster concept. But Minikube is cluster concept. Huh? No, all those Kubernetes related components will be everything in one server only. Minikube, this server itself will act as a Kube API server. This server will act as a scheduler. This server will act as a control plane, right? And this server itself acts as a everything. It's a single stuff, everything in one and all, right? So everything will be there inside this server only. So just in case if something goes wrong with this server, all your pods are gone. So for that reason, we will not be using the Minikube at all in the real time. Then why you are teaching, sir? Right? First, I'll give you the pain first and then the ointment on top of it. Right? So for that reason here, first you need to learn the things and then go for the automation stuff. Right? So without learning about the manual things, if you directly go for automation, and that is the reason also I didn't taught you ECS, EKS in AWS. Because in AWS, now tell me, in AWS we learn so many topics. Directly, if I go for EKS and ECS, will you understand anything? 100 to 1000% no. That's the reason why I holded the topic on that day. Because now you understand Docker, now you understand Kubernetes. On top of it, EKS is very easy. Right? Yeah. Okay, see here, Nana. So now it is installed completely. And Minikube, say that. Minikube status. If you say here, Minikube status. If you say Minikube status, what this machine is? Control plane. And host is running. This machine is also kubelet meaning what? Agent. This machine itself is agent. This machine is API server. On your kube configs, everything is also configured properly. So we have here kube config. Very important. Say that word. Say that. We'll be using this kube config. It is just like it's a config file for your Kubernetes. It's a config file. It contains the entire information about the cluster. So here Minikube. So by default, that will be in your home directory. There is a hidden directory called .cube. Which one? So where are we now? In root only, right? Do you see this here? Do you see that here? .cube. So if I go inside cd.cube, if you go here, do you see config file? If you go into cat config, so this is the YAML and the configuration file of your entire cluster or Minikube. This is super important. If you want to do a lot of configurations, if you want to authenticate, if you want to get the information about the cluster, etc., we'll be using this config file in coming days, not now at all. But remember, so there is a, where is your config file? Under .cube. Which one? .cube. So if you just try to read this little bit, so do you see here cluster? This is a certificate. What is the name? Cluster info. Which version it is? Minikube. Name is Minikube, right? And then user mini namespace. Do you see namespaces? What is the default namespace? Default only, right? Yeah, that's fine. PWD, yeah, here under root only. So under root hidden directory called .cube. Okay, fine. All right, so let's move on. So what is the command here? What is the always command that we use? kubectl. Say that. Dinesh, K, not Q. kubectl. Kubernetes. kubectl. Say that. kubectl. So how you got habituated with Git? How you got habituated with the Ansible playbook? How you got habituated with Docker? Similarly, in Kubernetes, you need to get habituated with kubectl. So kubectl get nodes. Say that. kubectl gets node. So if you say this kubectl get nodes, and do you see this? This is the name is what? Minikube, and the status is ready. And what is this here? Control plane. And when it is, and which version the Minikube is running on. So what's the command to get the nodes here? kubectl get nodes. Okay. What is your favorite command to list the pods? kubectl get pods. Read it, what it says. No resources found in a default namespace. Which is, so by default, everything, whatever the pods that you creating, everything will be inside the namespace. What is the default namespace that you have? Default. So can we create our own namespaces also? We will create in coming days. But until then, we'll use which namespace? Default namespace. Did we create any pods till now? No. That's why it says pod is nothing but is a resource or not. Pod is nothing but is a resource. That's why it says no resources found in the default namespace. That's the error you get. Understanding the error is also important. Okay, good, Nana. Yeah. So we can create the pods in two ways. How many ways? We can create the pods in two ways. Number one, we call it as, say this, imperative, say that. And another one is declarative. Say with me. Imperative and then declarative. It's a very important interview question. So how many ways that you can create the pods? How many ways you can create the pods? Two ways. What are those? Imperative and then declarative. Imperative meaning what here? Through commands. You can create, remember ad hoc commands, Ansible? We wrote everything in the commands, right? So, or else we can write a playbook. Remember, say, remember in Docker also, we created the containers manually, and then we use Docker Compose to create the containers automatically. File, Docker Compose file, Docker Compose.yaml file. So similarly here also, so you can create the pods using the commands. We call it as imperative. Say that. And then you can also create the pods using a file. We call it as manifest file. Say that. Say that, Vinvina. If you write a command, you need to write that command every time. You need to remember and write it. But if you create a file, can you reuse the file a number of times or not? Yes. And what is that file to be called? Say that. In Ansible, how we call it as playbook. In Jenkins, how we call it as Jenkins file. In Docker, how we call it as Docker file. So similar in Kubernetes, we call it as manifest file. Remember, in Kubernetes, the word which is very important, what is that? Manifest file. We always write the manifest file. Which is the best way to go for? Imperative or declarative? Tell me. Imperative or declarative? Answer is declarative. Why do you go and run the commands there? So let's create a manifest file, whatever, write whatever that you want, and then create a pods out of it. Okay. Okay. So let's go with a few. First, I need to show you what? Imperative or declarative? Imperative, right? So let's go and create pods using commands. Using what? Commands. Okay. What's the, so let's go and create a pod now. I want to create a pod with a pod name called pod1 with the image. And by the way, here pods contain containers inside it, and also container will create with the help of image or not. Remember, Kubernetes is using backend Docker Hub only. Which one? Docker Hub. Many people are getting confused generally. Sir, Kubernetes, there is a Docker meaning, sir, we are done with Docker, you are now in Kubernetes. There is no relation between Kubernetes and Docker? Yes. नीचे छुप के रहेगा कौन? Docker. Where? In Kubernetes. So Docker is the guy who will be hiding in the bottom, and he is the guy who will be creating the containers, and then he's he's pulling the image from where? Docker Hub. Still the concept. And you feel little bit smell of Docker commands here. Okay, let's create a pod now. Say with me, what's the command?